speaking now with Christine Ntim. She is Chief Marketing Officer with Global Startup Ecosystem, and she is going to be speaking at the Lifestyle Tech Conference, part of the Start Me Up Hong Kong 2020 Festival. You can sign up online to do that. So Christine, tell me a little bit about what you're going to talk about at the festival and why that matters so much.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very much excited to be at this festival later on this summer. And as a Chief Marketing Officer of GSC, I think, the most important conversations for startups to have this year is about adaptability. So that's something that I'm really going to be talking about, how to really pivot and scale during a year like 2020 with everything that's happening.
And this is the first time that the Start Me Up Festival has gone virtual. So what do you think about events happening like that, and what's exciting about it to you?
Yeah, I think, having it go virtual is actually a great opportunity for it to go global and reach more stakeholders who probably couldn't have attended the festival in the past or attend the Start Me Up programming, and reach a whole new audience. And at the Global Startup Ecosystem, we actually run about 42 events around the world virtually this year due to the pandemic. So I'm actually hosting virtual sessions almost every single week. So the Global Startup Ecosystem, we've been around for several years, and we are started as a digital accelerator program. We're actually the world's first and largest digital accelerator on the planet. We accelerate about 1,000 companies across 90 countries every single year. And starting in 2017, we started hosting tech summits in emerging markets. So Haiti Tech Summit, Ghana Tech Summit, Nigeria Tech Summit. And so I think, we are seeing a transition where the tech ecosystem is becoming more accessible because it's digital first. And at the Global Startup Ecosystem, our premise was preparing individuals and organizations for the digital age. And so now this year has been a great time for us to scale our efforts globally on a whole new wavelength. So it's been an amazing journey thus far. And I think we're just so proud of seeing tech as the way of the future, not only for individuals and for businesses, but for entire nations. I mean, I think technology is what really transforms how people understand emerging markets in general, and seeing the potential and the talent that is in emerging markets. So at GSC, we've been digital first, and this has been a great opportunity for us to showcase that ability.
So you've talked a lot there about your involvement in emerging markets and some of the countries that you've been hosting events in. Tell me where you're seeing some of the most exciting developments and where the future might be coming from.
Yeah, I think, right now, investors can no longer make excuses about emerging markets. I think, there are a lot of enablers, places like Hong Kong. I mean, I've been to Hong Kong many times, several times in the tech ecosystem. So I know the tech talent that comes out of there. A lot of startups actually been in our program as well. Africa is definitely a huge conversation of where a lot of the biggest companies are coming out of right now. Latin America. I think the conversation is not so much where is it coming from, but what is being created in emerging markets. I think there's a big conversation around practicality and solutions that really make sense coming out of emerging markets. So it's amazing to see people, seeing real innovative companies coming out of places across emerging market countries. I mean, for me personally, who would have thought Haiti would have been a market that people actually fly to every single year. Our first launch in 2017 had 83 million views. We actually broke the internet for Haiti. What Silicon Valley had wasn't really the talent, was a narrative. And now that narrative is being shifted to the emerging markets, where people are seeing, now you're seeing mainstream conversations about the tech ecosystem from these markets. And I think that's probably the biggest responsibility that we all have, is showcasing that talent, showcasing that narrative, and being proud of that.
Now, you mentioned there that some of the greatest ideas you're seeing from these emerging markets are sort of practical solutions. Tell us about just some of the most exciting sort of sectors or developments that have caught your eye recently.
Yes, I mean, where do I even begin? I think, one thing that a narrative that's been mainstream about emerging markets is that we're leapfrogging, right? Or we're creating technologies that are practical. During this pandemic in Ghana, they're already doing drone deliveries of medical supplies across the nation, especially in rural areas where there's not a physical infrastructure to get from, a rural part of Accra to this, a rural part of Ghana to the central part of Accra City, the capital. And so you're seeing people taking practical steps to really, tackle, distribution. And places like the US, it's probably not a need. So obviously they're not really looking to those innovative solutions. So that's something that's, recently that has been really picking up storm, and a lot of people are actually leveraging that case study to apply in other markets. I mean, probably in the past decade, everyone knows about M-Pesa and what it's done to transform not only the banking sector of Kenya, but across Africa. Who would have thought that, right now, when you go into markets in Africa, you don't even need a card. You need just your phone number, and you have access to all of your capital, all of your banking needs. That happened on the African continent because the banking infrastructure wasn't as optimized. And so these innovations that I feel like other markets have the narrative to take credit for actually came from emerging markets. You're looking at companies like in Tesla and across Silicon Valley, their coders, the developers are actually coming from Ethiopia, right? And so these are the conversations that we need to have about not just the, practical startup solutions that are coming from our markets, but how we're creating real case studies to be applied in other markets, because we're already leapfrogging in many ways. So these are 3 areas that I'm so proud to see coming out of Africa, out of the Caribbean, and in emerging markets, where you're seeing a huge flow of practical solutions, saving lives, impacting lives in just very, very unique ways.
What would you say your top tips that you could give to someone who's starting out? They think they've got a great idea. How do they stand out from the crowd and shout loudest?
Great question. I think my top probably 3 tips I would give entrepreneurs who are first starting out and trying to really build and scale something that has a legacy. And I think that's something that a lot of startups now, you're not just building ideas into companies, you're building ideas into real legacy brands that can really change the world, right? The first and foremost, I think a lot of people talk a lot about the business plan. The business plan is dead. Just get out there and be practical and just start talking, start getting the product out there. We talk a lot about customer acquisition and growth hacking. Even if it requires you building something online, now it's a lot easier to go online with social media pages, websites. Just get it out there. Don't overthinking. Build a business plan as you go along. Don't build the business plan before you start, because you'd be very shocked at what you learn immediately once you get to your first customer or your first user. So that's the first thing. Second, I think entrepreneurs need to understand that your ability to build and scale is your creativity around understanding the resources around you. And now your resources are global. You no longer are bound by just the resources that's been built around your community. You could get resources around the world. When I first got started, my first business that is now a business case study at Harvard Business School, the first thing I did was create a spreadsheet, all the top tech accelerators, all the top incubators, all the top startup programs, all the top festivals. I literally had a resource database that I created through research to understand all the top investors, partners, even programs around the world. That database to this day is what we use to support entrepreneurs in other markets. And the third and final thing I would say to entrepreneurs, be very mindful of your narrative. Your ability to tell your story in a powerful way can make or break your business, because you have companies out there that probably have less actual real practical solutions than your company, but they're the ones on the mainstream. Why? Because they focus on what is the story of the founder and what is the story of the business. So I talk about, being able to pitch your business in under 60 seconds or less, showing the practicality, the journey. Storytelling is the most important thing, because as an entrepreneur, probably the biggest skill you could have right now is digital marketing. Your ability to say your story in a digital way that everyone can follow.